Hello, I'm Larson Halleck, and welcome to a decidedly different edition of Manthropology. A very sobering edition of Manthropology. I say sobering to prepare you for a video that's going to have a dearth of laughs, because the topic we're discussing is not one that I can draw any humor from. And to be honest, it doesn't have any direct connection to the field of anthropology, but it does have a massive indirect relationship to my beloved field. This is the story of the Reimer twins, and the experiment done upon them. An utterly flawed experiment that has since become one of the foundation stones of modern leftist anthropology and gender studies. An experiment that proves the old adage about the road to hell, and worst of all, an experiment whose progenitor escaped any justice at all. David and Brian Reimer were twin brothers born in Winnipeg, Canada in 1965. The twins were diagnosed with phimosis, a failure of the foreskin to retract properly, and circumcision was prescribed. David's circumcision was botched, and he was essentially castrated. Rightfully concerned, the two parents went to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore and met with Dr. John Money, a doctor who was heralded as a groundbreaking pioneer with his gender identity clinic, a state-of-the-art clinic treating people with sexual disorders. Naturally, with such a credentialed medical practitioner, they took his advice. And what was that advice? Money's idea was to surgically remove what little remained of David's penis and simply raise him as a girl instead of a boy. Why was this his idea? Two reasons. One being that reconstructive surgery on the penis was very primitive in 1960, and secondly, to test a theory. John Money, much like other good thinkers of the time and to this day, felt that sexuality and sexual behavior were primarily caused by social conditioning from early childhood. Thus, for the castrated child's own sake, if you just raised him as a girl from infancy, it would be easier than being a boy with a mangled penis. As a side note, make sure to notice that Money's clinic was the gender identity clinic. Gender. John Money is one of the biggest pioneers of using the term gender in place of sex, and speaking in terms of the medical field, he was one of the earliest advocates of the concept of gender as being something fluid and created strictly by nurture. Of course, if you've seen my Margaret Mead video, you'll know this concept was already prevalent in anthropology, but seeing as I can't find any proof that he was a student of Mead, let's just assume that this was a bit of convergent evolution and he came up with the idea independently. He also differentiated between affectionate and sadistic pedophilia, and I quote, "If I were to see the case of a boy aged 10 or 11 who's intensely erotically attracted towards a man in his 20s or 30s, if the relationship is totally mutual and the bonding is genuinely totally mutual, then I would not call it pathological in any way." Why did I mention that? No reason. Anyway, this was a scientific boon that had fallen into Money's lap. A test subject not even a year old, and a twin brother as a control subject. Thus, the kids were regularly counseled and observed by Money from their infancy until about 10 years old. To imprint the learned gender roles upon the boy and girl, Money had these prepubescent children do things like simulate sex, with David in the female role and his brother in the male role, take off each other's clothes to, and I quote, inspect each other's genitals under the belief that childhood sexual rehearsal play is important for a stable and healthy adult gender identity. Oh, and he also took pictures of all this. The Reimer family accepted this until Money suggested that David have a surgically constructed vagina, at which they stopped visiting the good doctor. Nonetheless, John Money reported complete success, reporting that David, renamed Brenda, acted and behaved as a girl, and that behavior could indeed overcome biology and determine sex. He told international reporters that the case, at least having the courtesy to change the names of the children, was a success, and said the child's behavior is so clearly that of an active little girl and so different from the boyish ways of her twin brother. And from the 60s until the 90s, John Money was feted, having 65 awards from various governing bodies around the world, wings of museums named after him, published textbooks adopted by universities, and so forth. But of course, the experiment wasn't actually successful. Even by the age of 2, Brenda was very masculine, into roughhousing and other boyish activities, playing with her brother's toys and not the typical girl toys. Brenda was also bullied by the biological girls in school for looking like a boy and being rough and tumble and unctuous. The brother Brian also became something of a juvenile delinquent, possibly from the trauma of all this, and at the age of 14, the parents told the boys the truth. While this was a great psychological relief to them, their lives did not get much better from there. By the time both boys were about 40, they had both killed themselves, Brian from a drug overdose and David via gunshot. Naturally, this didn't affect John Money at all. He continued to claim that his experiment was a success. In fact, he claimed that the Reimer brothers' story was false and a creation of a right-wing media and anti-feminists. He claimed that his detractors believe that masculinity and femininity are built into the genes, so women should get back to the mattress and the kitchen. So even though Money was not himself an anthropologist, he could lie and obfuscate just as good as any leftist anthropologist. And apparently it worked, since he died peacefully of old age in his home in the year 2006, honors heaped upon his house. And his theories are still used as scientific proof by cultural anthropologists, gender study professors, and others pushing for children to have sex change operations. In short, all those fighting a tenacious battle against reality. After all, they have scientists like John Money and Margaret Mead supporting their theories, don't they? And that's why I put this under the Manthropology banner. People ask me why I talk about anthropology and crackpot scientific theories. This is why. Because gender idiocy and manipulated data does a lot more than make us dumb. It can cause 2 young men to kill themselves. And considering that transgenders are well documented to be mentally ill in greater numbers than the cisgendered, how many more will kill themselves based on faulty research? I'm Larson Halleck, and I appreciate humanity in all of its splendor, not John Money's theories. Fuck him.